No, I'm fine with working until I just drop dead or something.
For Warren, this spiritual journey was completely foreign territory. He was the ultimate realist, a man focused on control, business deals, and power. He rarely spoke about religion or philosophy, and when pressed on such topics, he would dodge them with his natural charm. The contrast between his silence on spiritual matters and Shirley's loud declarations about cosmic truth could not have been more dramatic. To Shirley, life was about discovering universal truths and exploring the mysteries of existence. To Warren, it seemed to be about the next film project, the next business deal, the next positive headline. This wasn't just a casual difference of opinion between siblings. It became a wedge that drove them further apart emotionally and intellectually. Shirley often spoke about how her family, especially Warren, never fully embraced or supported her spiritual beliefs. She hinted that he would roll his eyes at her experiences, never mocking her directly, but refusing to engage with her ideas in any serious way. In her books and interviews, Shirley would detail her out-of-body experiences or encounters with what she believed was extraterrestrial energy. But when asked if Warren ever showed support for these explorations, she gave diplomatic but telling answers. He doesn't really talk about it. That silence was crushing for Shirley. Her spiritual beliefs weren't just entertainment or a hobby. They had become her life's purpose and the foundation of her worldview. To be dismissed or ignored by her own brother, the person who should have understood her best, felt like a betrayal. It was made even more painful because Warren's traditional Hollywood success continued to grow alongside her spiritual journey. Warren was winning Oscars for films like Reds and commanding respect as a serious political filmmaker. Meanwhile, Shirley was being mocked on late-night television, shows for talking about Atlantis and ancient souls. He received reverence from the industry and critics, while she often got ridicule from the mainstream media. And she knew that Warren wasn't there to defend her or show support during these attacks on her credibility. Despite the criticism and mockery, Shirley never backed down from her beliefs. She actually doubled down on them, becoming a pioneer of New Age thinking at a time when Hollywood wasn't ready for such openness about spiritual topics. But in the process of building this new world of ideas and experiences, she created a space that Warren refused to enter. It was as if the siblings had set up homes on completely different planets, one grounded in the glitz and power of traditional Hollywood, the other floating somewhere between the stars and discussions of past lives. While the public either laughed at or criticized Shirley's spiritual journey, she carried the personal pain of knowing that the brother she had once protected had chosen emotional distance over family solidarity. This wasn't just about their different career paths anymore. It had become about their completely different approaches to understanding life itself. The depth of their complicated relationship became even more apparent when Shirley released rare childhood photographs in one of her memoirs. These images weren't just nostalgic family snapshots. They told a story that words alone never could capture. In those photos, you could see that Shirley wasn't simply the older sister. She was clearly the protector, standing beside a wide-eyed little boy with an unmistakable air of someone ready to fight off the world for him. Looking at these images, you could see the protective stance that only siblings truly understand. Shirley held herself tall and steady, already taking on the role she would describe years later as being half-sister and half-guardian to Warren. But there was another layer to these photographs that Shirley herself pointed out when discussing them publicly. Even as children, Shirley could see that Warren was different. He was strikingly handsome as a young boy, with a kind of natural appeal that seemed almost unfair for someone so young. Teachers and neighbors would fawn over him, while Shirley had to earn attention through her performance skills and personality. Looking back at those childhood photos, she could see this imbalance captured in the images themselves. In her smile, you could see pride in her little brother. In her posture, there was clearly love and protectiveness, but behind her eyes, maybe there was also the first hint of resentment. Even as a child, she was recognizing that Warren possessed a special quality that she would never have, no matter how hard she worked or how talented she became. When discussing these photos in interviews, Shirley admitted that she included them in her book because they reminded her of the dynamic that defined their entire lives together. She was always the one standing behind Warren, pushing him forward, and carrying the invisible weight of responsibility for his success and well-being. "I was the older one," she explained, "and I felt protective." But she also admitted something much darker. She sometimes wondered whether protecting Warren had meant sacrificing important pieces of herself along the way. The public rarely got to see these more complex sides of the Beatty MacLaine childhood. Glossy Hollywood magazines painted them as glamorous icons, but these personal photos revealed the raw truth of their family dynamics. They weren't equals, even as children. They were two kids growing up in the same house, but on completely different tracks. One seemed destined to be adored without asking for it. The other was destined to fight, earn every bit of recognition, and constantly prove her worth. Those childhood roles didn't change when they became adults and famous. If anything, they became magnified under the intense lights of Hollywood fame. The photographs weren't just touching memories from the past. They served as evidence of Shirley's lifelong role as both the proud sister who lifted her brother up and the overshadowed artist who quietly questioned whether she had given too much of herself in the process. As the years passed and both siblings aged, that tension from their childhood only hardened. What the photos had hinted at, the emotional distance and imbalance between them, played out in very real ways as they drifted further and further apart. By then, their relationship wasn't just shaped by childhood memories. It was defined by decades of silence, missed opportunities for connection, and important words that were left unsaid. As the decades rolled on, Shirley and Warren's relationship began to look like a performance where the two main actors never quite managed to share the stage at the same time. For people watching from the outside, it was easy to assume that two siblings who had reached the top of Hollywood's hierarchy must have been close. But the reality was quite different, marked by long periods of silence, very rare public appearances together, and an undercurrent of tension that neither ever fully explained to the media or their fans. The most telling sign of their distance was their complete professional separation. Unlike many other famous siblings in the entertainment industry, Shirley and Warren never acted together in a single film. There were no joint projects, no collaborations, and no public work where their talents came together. Shirley once joked that it might have been too dangerous for them to share the screen, but underneath that humor was something heavier, a mutual refusal to entangle their professional worlds. Warren stayed busy producing and directing Oscar-winning films, carefully building his images. He is Hollywood's golden man. Shirley continued carving out her own unique path, moving between acclaimed acting performances and writing spiritual bestsellers that often baffled the entertainment pries. Their careers ran on parallel tracks but rarely crossed paths in any meaningful way. Even in personal family matters, the gap between them was obvious. Shirley wasn't a regular part of Warren's family life. When he finally married actress Annette Bening and had children, Shirley spoke warmly about her sister-in-law and her nieces and nephews in interviews. But there was always a sense that she was observing Warren's family from the outside, rather than being deeply involved in their lives. Holidays were rarely shared between the siblings, and major milestones were often celebrated separately. The closeness that most people would expect from siblings who had both conquered Hollywood together never really developed. In her interviews over the years, Shirley dropped subtle hints about their relationship dynamic, often describing Warren as extremely private or difficult to know. She never made direct accusations or spoke with obvious bitterness, but her carefully chosen words carried significant weight. It was as if she was acknowledging that there was an emotional wall between them that fame had only made stronger and higher. Warren, for his part, rarely spoke about Shirley at all in his interviews or public appearances. His silence on the subject of their relationship was just as loud and meaningful as her carefully measured comments. It seemed as though both siblings understood that their relationship was complicated enough that it was better left unspoken in public. To Hollywood observers and fans, this became one of the entertainment industry's quiet mysteries. How could two of the most talented siblings in film history live in the same professional world but rarely acknowledge each other's presence in it? Shirley once said in an interview that family relationships aren't always about constant communication, but the tone of her voice when she said it suggested that what was missing between her and Warren wasn't just regular chatter. It was true intimacy and emotional connection. As the years passed, that silence between them began to feel permanent and unchangeable. Fans and entertainment journalists wondered if the full truth about their relationship would ever come to light. But then, late in her life, Shirley finally decided she wouldn't keep the complicated reality hidden anymore. At age 90, she began speaking openly, directly, and without her usual diplomatic hesitation. What she revealed left no room for speculation about the true nature of their lifelong relationship. When Shirley MacLaine turned 90, she did something that surprised many people who had followed her career. She completely dropped the careful filter she had maintained for decades when talking about Warren. After years of diplomatically worded hints and vague comments, she finally told the unvarnished truth about their relationship. This honesty came through interviews she gave while promoting her memoir, The Wall of Life, where she explored her past with unprecedented frankness and detail. For the first time, Shirley spoke not just as the protective older sister or the rival actress, but as a woman who had carried a complicated form of love for her brother across nearly 9 decades of life. She admitted that while she had always been very close to Warren, it wasn't the kind of closeness that the public had probably imagined. It wasn't a relationship built on constant emotional support or open communication between them. Instead, their bond had been defined by sharp contrasts, long periods of silence, and unresolved tension that had never been properly addressed. Shirley described Warren as private to the point of being secretive, someone who had built emotional walls so high that even family members couldn't break through them. For years, she had respect, that distance and his need for privacy. But privately, she admitted, it had frustrated her deeply. After all, she had been the one who carried him through childhood, pushed him toward the spotlight, and even protected him when critics or industry pressures became too intense. Yet when it came to Warren showing that same level of vulnerability and openness with her, it simply never happened. She had given so much of herself to supporting him, but that emotional generosity was never returned in the way she had hoped. Shirley's words in these late-life interviews were strikingly direct and honest. She revealed that Warren had always kept important parts of himself hidden, even from her as his closest family member. She confessed that this secrecy had created a lifelong source of frustration, because while the world saw Warren Beatty as magnetic and confident, she knew there were personal truths locked away that he refused to share with anyone. Most shocking of all, Shirley hinted that Warren's silence and privacy weren't just about protecting his fame or maintaining his public image. She suggested that his refusal to be completely open was about a deeper kind of honesty that she felt she had never received from him. Not fully, not even during their most personal moments as siblings. Despite these revelations, Shirley didn't express her feelings with obvious bitterness or anger. Instead, she painted a picture of hard-won acceptance after decades of hoping for something different. At 90 years old, she had finally come to understand that their relationship was never meant to be simple or straightforward. Their story wasn't going to be about siblings walking hand in hand through Hollywood success. It was the story of 2 extraordinary lives that ran side by side, occasionally brushing close to each other, but never fully merging or becoming truly intimate. She confessed that despite all the frustrations, missed opportunities for connection, and years of emotional distance, there was still genuine love between them. It was complicated love, imperfect love, but it was real and had endured through all their differences and disappointments. Shirley's revelation at age 90 was both heartbreaking and liberating for those who had wondered about their relationship for decades. After years of speculation by fans and entertainment journalists, Shirley MacLaine had finally admitted what many had sensed. Behind the glitter and success of Hollywood's most famous siblings was a relationship that had been defined not by harmony and mutual support, but by mystery, distance, and unspoken truths. In the end, her honest words left one haunting question hanging in the air for anyone who heard them. If Warren had ever truly let down his emotional guard and been completely honest with his sister, what truths about their family, their childhood, and himself might the world have finally learned? That question, like so much about their relationship, would probably remain unanswered, leaving their story as one of Hollywood's most complex and fascinating family mysteries.